Have a plan. That's the next thing we have to do is you got to think about a plan. You're going to go out and practice 3 times a week, let's say for 45 minutes. My suggestion would be that the first 15 minutes you do the drills that are in chapter 1 of my video series. Those are fundamental drills to being able to cast. I'm just telling you, when I go out to practice, and I've been doing this a long time, and I practice 6 to 8 hours a week some weeks when I'm not guiding, and I guarantee you that at least 25% of that time it's on basic drills. It's long distance drills, it's shooting drills, it's loop drills, it's horizontal casting drills, it's tip casting drills, it's drills over and over and over again. The only thing that you've got to look at drills as the blocking and tackling of fly casting. If you can't block and tackle, I don't care what kind of an offensive scheme you have, you can't run it because you can't block. It doesn't matter how good your defensive coordinator is. If you can't tackle, you can't win a football game because you can't stop the opposing team. It's the same thing here. If you don't have good loops, if you don't have good rod control, if you don't understand how to control the tip of that rod, you will not pass this test. And so to me, I spend 15 to 20 to 25% of my time at the beginning of every practice session doing drills. Then I spend a couple of minutes just doing pickups and false casting, just pick up and false casting. I want to pick up and false cast. I pick up and false cast 20 feet, 30 feet, 45 feet, 50 feet. I do it off my dominant shoulder. I do it off my off shoulder. I spend 5 or 10 minutes just doing that. I do it horizontal. I do it vertical. I just work on just my loops. And then I'll practice a specific task during that period, or at least a piece of a specific task. For instance, in the MCI exam, on task number 4, you're supposed to put a mend around a cone at 15, 25, and 35 feet. I might go out and spend 5 minutes doing nothing but putting a mend around a 25-foot cone to the right. That's all. Then tomorrow I may do 5 minutes of nothing but a 15-foot cone to the left. I'm very specific in my practice organization. I don't work on more than 2 or 3 things in a given day, and then I review the other stuff. So first thing I do is warm up, maybe 10 minutes. Then I review what I've worked on the last week or so and consolidate stuff that I think I've learned pretty well for the next 10 or 15 minutes. And then what we do is we work on a new skill for 10 or 15 minutes, and then we review. So the whole thing might be somewhere between 45 minutes an hour for a casting, a casting session. And I think that's the best way to practice. There's been a ton of studies on how people practice best and get better. And I can just tell you, you can argue, well, I'm different, and you may be different, but the bottom line is, I doubt it. You're pretty much going to learn just like everybody else in the world learns. And we'll talk about a couple of books that I would highly suggest that that you read before you endeavor to go too far into this journey of yours. Break the task. We're going to talk about this a lot more. Every task has pieces. Every task has pieces. For instance, on a pickup and lay down, or pickup and false casting, task number 1, you've got a pickup, you've got a transition from the pickup to the loops, and then you've got your loops. So you've got 3 basic pieces of even a simple task like task number 1. If you get into task number 12 and 13, which are the accuracy tasks on the dominant shoulder and then the opposite shoulder, you may have 15 or 20 various skills that are involved in the holistic development of that task to a successful conclusion. Each one of those skills could be taught separately. So my suggestion is break your stuff down, try not to teach things holistically until you can do the different pieces, and then put them all together. That's going to be a considerably more successful strategy than walking out and say, well, I'm going to do task 1, and then I'm going to do task 2, and then I'm going to do task 3, and then I'm going to do task 4, and for 45 minutes you end up getting to task 15, and you haven't learned a single thing. You're doing the same exact thing you did the day before, which is why so many people take years to pass this exam. I've said this a couple of times during the tape series. There is no reason that a person that's semi-coordinated and semi-intelligent should take more than a year and a half to pass this exam if they've had any casting experience before, if they approach it methodically, scientifically, instead of at random. They have a plan. And some people could argue, well, that's no fun. Well, I don't think it's much fun failing a test or taking 5 years either. So you can make whatever argument you want to. And I used to tell the kids that I coached, you can have fun Monday through Thursday, or you can have fun Friday night. And hopefully Monday through Thursday won't be torture, but Friday night you want to win. And if you're just goofing around doing whatever you want to do Monday through Thursday, then you're going to pay the price on Friday, and that's why we beat all those teams on Friday. because they're not paying attention. They don't have a plan. So that's something that's really important. Improve a little bit each day. Don't try to improve on 80 areas. Pick one area, one sub-skill, and improve on it in a practice session. I can't even begin to emphasize how important that is. The other thing is, don't get sloppy. When you start working on, let's say, task 4 and 5, which are reach mends, you need to think, when you practice it, you want to be down with your rod tip down. You want to forget about the reach mend. The reach mend is inconsequential if you have a horrible pickup and bad loops. You're going to think, before you start thinking about reach mend, you're going to sit there and you're going to think, I'm thinking about my pickup. I'm visualizing my pickup. I'm seeing where I have to stop. If you're a drifter, then you've got to drift. And then I'm making good loops, and then I'm kind of checking my loops out to make sure that they're good. Once I get them good, now I start thinking about the reach mend. I do not think about the reach mend immediately after the examiner reads me the question. That's a huge mistake. Then all of a sudden, whoof, the line goes flying up in the air. You got a huge back loop, and now you've got back loops, inconsistent loops. One thing at a time. First things first. Get yourself in position. Coaching football, you want to tackle a guy, you got to get in position before you can tackle him. You can't just run out there and be in the wrong place. It's the same thing here. One thing at a time. The last thing in this section is pretty important. Hey, don't blow off the bad days. You've got to work at the bad days. You got a bad day, then hey, just if it's not working for you that day, do something that you're pretty good at and go back and just consolidate stuff that you're good at. Make sure you're working on grass every day. Make sure that you're doing some roll casting on the water, at least, once or twice a month, because you could have the test on water. And whatever you do, man, you gotta practice in the wind. You look out there and those trees are just blowing back and forth and it's 45 degrees. I'm telling you, we tested, I think it was in 2014, somewhere, it might have been 13 or 14. We tested in West Yellowstone, Montana, in the first week of September, I believe it was, or maybe the second week of September. The wind was blowing about 15 miles an hour. It was snowing. The high temperature was 36 degrees and people were taking their test. And the guys who passed were the ones who had practiced in those kinds of conditions. The guys that didn't pass were the guys who blew off and all they did was bluebird sky practice sessions with 2-mile-an-hour winds. That is a recipe for absolute failure. I've taken, the first day I took my CI test, the wind was pretty reasonable. It was like 10 miles an hour and pretty consistent from one direction. When I took my MCI test, the wind was 18 miles an hour and it was swirling quite a bit at 18, not a whole lot, but it was swirling 140 degrees back and forth. So, I had practiced in it though. I go out and practice in 30-mile-an-hour winds. That's the way you're going to get better.